Welcome back, everyone, to the Deep Dive. This time, we're switching gears a little bit. We're diving into Pastor Lumaw's Mongolian adventures from 2023.
Oh yeah, this one's pretty cool. We've got a first-hand account here.
Exactly. It's a
Yeah.
really personal look at missionary work in a pretty unique setting. We've got cultural immersion,
Mm.
spiritual reflections, and a lot of unexpected turns. I mean, Pastor Lumaw actually encounters four significant firsts during his trip.
4. Wow.
Yeah, we'll get to those.
Okay.
We're heading to Mongolia, virtually, of course, with Pastor Lumaow and his experiences on a mission trip in 2023.
And what a year 2023 was.
Oh, tell me about it. This trip, it was chock full of firsts for Pastor Lumaow. Let's just say it was a memorable one.
I think what really strikes me about Pastor Lumafoo's journey is how it just so happened to intersect with that unique moment, 2023. It was a time when the whole world was kind of in this weird transition phase, right? Coming out of those pandemic restrictions and everything. But there was still so much uncertainty hanging in the air, especially when it came to international travel.
Yeah, absolutely. And Pastor Lumafoo's experience really puts a spotlight on that whole travel fiasco, trying to get from Taiwan to Mongolia. Turns out not all airlines were on the same page, so to speak, about the latest entry requirements for different countries.
Right.
Picture this. He gets to the check-in counter, ready to embark on his mission, and he's only issued a ticket to Incheon, South Korea. That was his layover spot, not his final destination. Can you even imagine?
Yeah, that must have been a little unnerving. It really goes to show, even with meticulous planning, confirmations from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, discrepancies could still pop up.
Yeah.
Travel in 2023, it was a bit of a wild card.
Totally unpredictable.
Yeah.
He basically had to have faith that things would sort themselves out once he landed in Incheon. I mean, talk about stressful. But get this, his connecting flight to Mongolia, booked through Mongolian Airlines, ended up not even requiring a vaccine card.
Really?
Go figure, right.
It's interesting how Pastor Lumaow really leaned into his resilience and faith throughout this whole ordeal. He mentions in his account that he turned to prayer on that flight, finding that inner peace amidst all the chaos.
For sure. It's a testament to his ability to adapt and trust, don't you think?
Absolutely. And that adaptability really was a key theme throughout his mission, Like when he arrived in Mongolia, his goal was to connect with the Tsaatan people.
The Tsaatan. Right. Now, for our listeners who might not be familiar, could you give us a quick rundown on this group?
Of course, the Tsaatan, they're a nomadic group, and their lives are deeply intertwined with reindeer herding. They depend on those reindeer for just about everything. Food, transportation, trade. Their whole existence is really in sync with the rhythms of nature.
And this is where another first comes into play for Pastor Lumaow. He was really struck by how flat the terrain was where the Tsaatan lived. You see, in his past experience working with minority groups, he was used to those mountainous, hidden-away areas. So this wide-open landscape, it was a big change for him.
Yeah, it kind of challenges our preconceived notions about what constitutes a remote community, doesn't it? We often associate isolation with those rugged, inaccessible landscapes. But here we have the Tsaatan, a nomadic group thriving on these vast plains.
Exactly. It's a good reminder that remoteness can come in many forms. And that brings us to another unexpected first for Pastor Lumaow. He talks about the sheer abundance of meat he encountered while staying with the Tsaatan. He'd never experienced anything like it on his previous missions where food, especially meat, was usually quite scarce.
I see.
It really highlights the unique lifestyle of the Tsaatan, their close connection to the reindeer for survival. It goes beyond just sustenance. It speaks to a deep-rooted relationship with their environment, their ability to thrive in a landscape that might seem challenging to many of us.
Right, yeah.
And let's not forget the generosity of the Tsaatan, welcoming Pastor Lumaow into their community and sharing their resources so freely. And speaking of firsts, well, there's one more we simply can't leave out. The horseback riding. Pastor Lumaow had the journey to his next destination on horseback. We're not talking about a leisurely ride here. This was a 5-hour trek.
5 hours, wow.
And, as we touched on earlier, Pastor Lumaow is shall we say, a man of considerable stature. He mentions weighing around 110 kilograms. Can you imagine that horse's perspective?
I can only imagine. That horse probably hadn't carried someone of that size before.
It might have been a first for the horse as well. But all jokes aside, it really speaks to the remarkable adaptability of both man and beast, finding a way to navigate this journey together.
Absolutely.
Pastor Lumaow seemed to embrace the challenge wholeheartedly. He even draws a comparison to a brief, guided horseback riding experience he had years ago, highlighting the stark contrast to this extended, immersive journey.
It wasn't just a touristy activity, right?
No, not at all.
It was a real test of endurance, physically and mentally, and maybe, even a metaphor for his entire mission trip. Venturing into the unknown, facing those unexpected hurdles, and adapting along the way.
I really like that connection you've made. It perfectly sets the stage for the rest of his adventures in Mongolia.
So, speaking of horseback riding, that whole adventure actually leads us to something really interesting about Mongolian culture. The Nadam Festival, have you heard of it?
Yeah, I have. It's like Mongolia's biggest national festival, right?
Mm.
And horse racing is a huge part of it, if I remember correctly.
You got it. Horse racing, wrestling, and archery. They're the big three competitions, often called the three manly sports. They're super deeply rooted in Mongolian history and tradition.
I see. And get this, Pastor Lumaow was actually invited to participate, wasn't he?
He was. He even mentions in his account that someone suggested he try his hand at the horse races, fresh off that 5-hour ride, no less.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. But I mean, obviously he politely declined, right?
He did, yeah. He understood that to really take part in Nadam, especially the horse races, you need years of training and skill. It's not something you just jump into.
Right, right. It shows a lot of humility and self-awareness on his part, recognizing his limits and not letting pride push him into a situation where he'd be totally out of his depth.
Totally. And it speaks to a larger theme in his journey, this idea of respecting cultural traditions, understanding the depth of knowledge and skill that goes into participating authentically.
It's a good lesson for all of us, right? To approach new experiences with a sense of humility, to be open to learning and observing before we assume we can just dive right in.
Sure, sure. And speaking of learning and observation, Pastor Lumaow has this really profound reflection about horses during his time in Mongolia. He compares them to untapped potential, waiting to be trained and developed, to reach their full capabilities.
And he even ties this back to that biblical quote, right? Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. He sees the horse as a symbol of that potential, that meekness, and the earth in this context representing that expanded territory of God's work.
It's a powerful image, really makes you think. It reminds us that growth, true growth, it often takes patience, guidance, a willingness to embrace that whole process of learning and honing our skills. It's not always about those instant results. It's about that journey of becoming more than we are now.
Like a skilled rider guiding a horse. Maybe we all need those mentors and experiences that can help us unlock our own potential, find our place in this world. Pastor Lumaow's journey, this whole this Mongolian odyssey, as we've been calling it, it really is a testament to what can happen when you embrace the unknown, step outside your comfort zone.
It really is. And as he goes deeper into his mission work, he encounters another layer of complexity, the incredible diversity of cultures in that region.
Yeah, he mentions interacting with Mongolians, the Tsaatan, Siberian Turkic people, Russians, especially near that Mongolian-Russian border. It's like a melting pot of cultures, each with their own unique history, traditions, ways of seeing the world.
It's a beautiful tapestry, but navigating those cultural dynamics, it takes a lot of sensitivity, a lot of patience. Pastor Lumaow, he describes it as walking a tightrope.
That's a perfect analogy. You can really picture the carefulness, the agility needed to move through such a diverse environment, especially when you're doing missionary work.
Exactly. It's all about respecting those boundaries, understanding those nuances, building trust through genuine connection.
It makes you think about the importance of really listening, truly listening, to understand the viewpoints and experiences of people who come from backgrounds different from our own, recognizing that our way of seeing things isn't the only way, that there's so much value in learning from those with different beliefs and perspectives.
In that learning, sometimes it can be as unexpected, as humbling as learning to ride a horse for the first time. Pastor Lumaow, he even reflects on how quickly he adapted to that whole horseback riding thing. It was almost like a minor miracle, he says, considering the initial challenges.
It really highlights that human capacity for adaptation, right? Our ability to find our footing, even in the most unfamiliar situations. It's like a reminder that even when things seem really daunting, really complex, we have this incredible ability to learn and grow.
Absolutely. And as we head towards the conclusion of Pastor Lumaow's Mongolian adventure, his experiences really leave us with some pretty profound questions to consider.
So you were saying that Pastor Lumaow's experiences, this whole Mongolian adventure, it leaves us with some things to really think about.
Yeah, and it's not just about that cultural tapestry that he encountered. He also delves into the historical context, talking about figures like Genghis Khan and Kublai Khan. Their empires, they really shaped that entire region centuries ago.
It's amazing how those echoes of the past, they still resonate in Mongolia today. Makes you realize how much the past influences the present.
Totally. And Pastor Lumafu observes that Mongolia is still finding its way in the world, between its rich history and its evolving identity in this modern geopolitical landscape.
He also talks about how this history plays a role in the relationships between all those different groups in the region. It's definitely a delicate situation that needs a lot of understanding, especially when you're doing missionary work.
Right. He really emphasizes that need for humility when approaching those cultural interactions, acknowledging that trust and understanding, they take time to build. There's a real sense of responsibility there, wouldn't you say, when you're engaging with different cultures?
Absolutely. It's not just about sharing your own beliefs, it's about being open to learning from others, valuing their unique points of view and experiences.
And sometimes that learning process can be as challenging and as rewarding as learning to ride a horse. Pastor Lumafu actually compares the two. He even marvels at how quickly he got the hang of horseback riding, considering how apprehensive he was at first.
Well, that speaks volumes about our human capacity for resilience, right?
Mhm.
Our ability to adapt and thrive in these totally unexpected situations.
Definitely. And as we wrap up our deep dive into Pastor Lumafu's Mongolian journey, it's that spirit of adaptability and openness that really sticks with you. Remember, he went through a ton of firsts on this trip. Everything from navigating the crazy world of post-pandemic travel to immersing himself in the rich cultural landscape of Mongolia.
It's pretty incredible how all those experiences, especially those four major firsts, shaped his journey. The travel hiccups, that flat landscape where the Tsaatan live, the abundance of meat in their diet, and of course that unforgettable horseback riding adventure.
Yeah, and each of those firsts offered its own lessons and challenges, pushing him to adapt and grow along the way. And as he reflects on everything he's learned, he leaves us with a question, something for all of us to ponder. What firsts have we experienced that pushed our boundaries, that helped us see the world, or maybe even our faith in a new light?
It's a beautiful note to end on. It encourages us all to think about our own paths of self-discovery, about the transformative power of venturing outside our comfort zones.
Maybe, like Pastor Lumafu, we've all been on our own personal odysseys, full of unexpected twists and turns, moments of grace, and that incredible realization that there's always more to learn and experience in this vast and diverse world.
And on that note, we want to thank you all for joining us on this deep dive into Pastor Lumafu's Mongolian adventure. We hope you found it insightful, thought-provoking, and maybe even a little inspiring. Go out there and embrace those firsts with an open mind and a willingness to learn.